My younger brother stole my company's technological idea, putting me at risk of being fired. When I confronted him, my parents turned around and blamed me, accusing me of slandering and wrongfully blaming him. But then my brother suddenly disappeared, without a trace, without a single word of goodbye. I'm Dylan, 35 years old, living in a small apartment in the suburbs of Seattle where it rains almost year-round. I'm a tech engineer, a job I love with all my heart, even though it keeps me up so late that my eyes turn red. I work for Nextlify, a startup in downtown Seattle where everyone dreams of creating something that will change the world. I'm not one to talk much about myself, but if I had to, I'd say I'm proud of pouring my heart and soul into every project, as if it were my entire life. The project I've been pouring my efforts into is an AI system called OptiCore. It sounds fancy, but the idea behind it is actually very relatable. I want to create a program that helps people find answers to their problems faster and more accurately. You've probably been in this situation before. You have a question, you Google it, and a ton of results pop up, but you don't know which one to trust. OptiCore will change that. It's like a wise friend who sifts through millions of pieces of information in the blink of an eye, picks out the most accurate answer, and hands it to you. For example, if you're wondering, how do I fix a leaky pipe? Or how do I invest in stocks as a beginner? OptiCore will give you a clear, reliable solution without beating around the bush. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? At my company, everyone has high hopes for OptiCore. My boss, Mike, once grabbed my shoulder in the meeting room and said, "Dylan, if you pull this off, our company will reach a whole new level." The pressure is heavy, but I don't mind. I love the feeling of my heart pounding when I solve a tough problem, when I see the program running smoothly on the screen. Some nights I sit alone in my apartment, with only the sound of my typing and the rain outside the window, but I feel happy. To me, OptiCore isn't just a job. It's a dream I've been nurturing. My apartment is small, cluttered, filled with tech books and a few chipped coffee mugs. On the shelf, there's an old family photo from when I was a kid, but I rarely look at it. I don't often visit my parents in Tacoma, not because I'm angry or anything, it's just we've grown distant. I have a younger brother, Kyle, 29 years old, 6 years younger than me. Kyle is the free-spirited type, loves partying, and is currently unemployed, living off our parents. We used to be close, but now we've each gone our own way. Kyle rarely calls, and I don't reach out either. Maybe deep down, I've always known there's a gap between us that can't be bridged. One evening, it was a Friday night with the usual light drizzle falling. I was sitting in front of my computer, checking on OptiCore, a cold cup of coffee beside me. The sound of rain tapping against the window made me feel at peace. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, interrupting my train of thought. I looked up from the screen, frowning. Who could it be at this hour? It was nearly 10 o'clock, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I stood up, pulled a sweater over my head to ward off the chill, and shuffled toward the door. Peering through the peephole, I froze. Kyle, my younger brother, standing there, his hoodie soaked through, hands stuffed in his pockets, looking awkward. I opened the door, a mix of surprise and unease washing over me. "Kyle, what are you doing here?" I asked, my voice betraying how unfamiliar this felt. We rarely saw each other, let alone had unexpected visits like this. Kyle shrugged, flashing a forced smile. "Oh, just passing by, thought I'd drop in." "It's been a while, right?" His tone was casual, but there was something off, as if he was trying to hide something. I invited Kyle in, trying to act friendly despite the questions swirling in my mind. My small apartment suddenly felt cramped as he stepped inside, bringing with him the smell of rain and a faint whiff of cigarette smoke. Kyle glanced around, his eyes scanning the stacks of books, the computer, and then lingering on my glowing screen. "Still glued to your computer, huh, bro?" he asked, his tone half teasing, half mocking. I gave a faint smile and nodded. "Yeah, work stuff. Sit down, want something to drink? Coffee? Water?" Kyle shook his head and flopped onto the sofa, hands still in his pockets. We talked, but it wasn't anything deep. Kyle rambled on about his friends, Tacoma, and some parties he'd been to. I listened, nodding along, but my mind kept drifting back to Opticore. At one point, I got up to grab some water from the kitchen, leaving Kyle alone in the living room. When I returned, I saw him sitting at my computer, his fingers gliding over the keyboard. The screen was still on, displaying Opticore's interface. My heart skipped a beat, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What are you doing?" I asked, keeping my tone light, not wanting to sound suspicious. Kyle flinched, turned around, and smirked. "Oh, nothing, just curious. Your tech stuff looks pretty cool." He stood up, acting like it was no big deal, and quickly changed the subject to some random, meaningless story. I nodded, not pressing further, though a flicker of unease stirred inside me. Kyle was my brother, and despite our distance, I trusted him. Or at least I wanted to. We exchanged a few more words, and then Kyle stood up, saying he had to go. "Take care, bro," he said, clapping me on the shoulder before stepping out the door. I watched his figure disappear into the rainy night, a strange feeling lingering like a cold draft slipping through a crack. I returned to my desk and checked the computer. Everything seemed normal, no signs of anything unusual. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Kyle was just curious, nothing more. But deep down, a quiet sense of foreboding began to creep in. I didn't know it then, but that moment, when I left Kyle alone with Opticore, I had unknowingly opened the door to a storm that was about to hit. 3 days later, my world came crashing down. I was at Nexlify's office, sitting in my usual corner with a screen full of Opticore's code, when Mike, my boss, stormed in, his face taut like a tightly strung wire. "Dylan, meeting room. Now." His voice was cold, not the usual friendly tone. My heart pounded, a bad feeling rising within me. I stood up, following Mike, my mind a whirlwind. What was going on? The meeting room was small, but the atmosphere was heavy, like a weight pressing down. Mike, 2 board members, and the technical director were there, their eyes fixed on me as if I'd committed some unforgivable crime. On the large screen was the logo of TechTrend, our biggest competitor. Below it was a software interface that looked chillingly familiar. It was Opticore, or at least something identical to it, from the button layout to the color scheme. The only difference was the name, TrueSolve. They had unveiled it that morning, accompanied by a massive advertising campaign proclaiming it as the revolutionary answer-finding solution for every problem. I stood frozen, as if someone had punched me square in the chest. This can't be," I stammered. Mike looked at me, his eyes sharp as knives. "Dylan, care to explain? This is your project. This system was supposed to be confined to our servers. How did it end up with TechTrend?" I shook my head, my mouth dry. "I don't know. I swear, I didn't do anything." But my words sounded feeble, like a breeze lost in a storm. They didn't believe me. The board demanded a full system audit, tracing every access point. Mike was blunt. "Dylan, if this leak came from you, whether by accident or intent, you know the consequences." I nodded, but inside I was burning. Losing my job was the last thing on my mind. Opticore was my life's work, the product of sleepless nights, the dream I'd built day by day. How could I have let it fall into someone else's hands? That afternoon, I was temporarily suspended pending the investigation. "Go home, Dylan," Mike said, his tone softer but still distant. "We'll be in touch." I packed my things and left Nexlify in the Seattle rain, my mind blank. On the way home, I scrolled through my phone, seeing TechTrend's ads flooding social media. TrueSolve, the answers you need instantly. Each word felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Back at my apartment, I collapsed onto the sofa, staring at the computer screen still displaying Opticore's interface. A wave of helplessness washed over me, but I refused to give in. I had to find out what had happened. Then, like a bolt of lightning, the image of Kyle sitting at my computer that night flashed in my mind, his awkward smile, his evasive eyes, his fingers gliding over the keyboard. No way. Or could it be? I shook my head, trying to dismiss the thought. Kyle was my brother. Even if he was aimless, even if we were distant, he wouldn't do that. but the suspicion clung to me like the chill of the rain seeping through my clothes. I stood up, grabbing my car keys. I needed answers, and I would start with Kyle. No matter how painful it might be, I had to face the truth. The rain kept falling as I drove to Tacoma. The I-5 highway blurred in the glow of my headlights. My mind was spinning, fragmented pieces starting to come together. Kyle sitting at my computer, his forced smile, his evasive eyes. I tried to push away the thought that my own brother could betray me, but every little detail clung to me like the rain seeping through my jacket. Kyle had never cared about my work, so why was he suddenly curious about OptiCore? And why the unexpected visit after years of barely any contact? My parents' house in Tacoma was the same as ever, a modest 2-story home with a weathered wooden fence. But what made me pause was a sleek black SUV parked in the front yard, gleaming under the streetlight. Kyle was unemployed, living off our parents. There's no way that could be his car. Could there be a guest? I knocked on the door and Mom opened it, her hair disheveled, her eyes wide with surprise. "Dylan, what are you doing here at this hour?" I forced a smile, exchanged a few pleasantries, then cut to the chase. I asked about the SUV parked outside. Mom sighed, her tone defensive. "Kyle said he borrowed money from a friend to buy it, to make job hunting easier." But Dad, sitting in his armchair, cut in. "Don't ask too many questions, Dylan. Kyle's trying his best. Don't make things harder for him." I looked at them, a chill settling in my chest. From childhood, my parents had always taken Kyle's side, no matter how much trouble he caused. I'd grown used to it, but now, with OptiCore, my life's work, stolen, their favoritism cut like a knife. "Where's Kyle, Mom? I need to talk to him." Mom frowned, her voice tinged with tension. "He's upstairs, but what's so urgent?" I didn't answer, just headed up the stairs, my heart heavy. Kyle was sprawled on his bed, phone in hand, earbuds blasting music. When he saw me, he sat up, smirking. Well, big bro's here to check on me. What's the hot news?" His tone was carefree, but I caught the unease in his eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Kyle, when you came to my place, what did you do with my computer?" He shrugged, giving a mocking laugh. "Do? What do you mean, do? I was just curious. Your tech stuff's boring as hell." I stood there, locking eyes with Kyle, keeping my voice steady despite the fire burning inside. "Kyle, OptiCore was stolen by Tech Trend. That night you were at my place. What did you do with my computer? And that SUV out there, where'd the money come from?" Kyle shot up, his face flushing, pointing at me. "What the hell are you saying? You're accusing me of stealing? I just looked at your computer. I didn't do anything. The car? I borrowed money from a friend. What's that got to do with you?" His voice grew louder, echoing through the small room. I couldn't hold back anymore and stepped closer, my voice rising too. "Kyle, don't play dumb. You're unemployed, living off Mom and Dad, and suddenly you've got cash for an SUV? Tech Trend unveiled a system identical to OptiCore just 3 days after you were there. You sold it, didn't you?" Kyle backed away, but his eyes were sharp like a cornered animal. "You got proof? No? Then don't slander me. You're always like this, thinking you're the big shot while I'm just a useless nobody." Our shouting shook the staircase. Mom rushed up, Dad trailing behind, their faces filled with worry. "Dylan, Kyle, what's going on?" Mom yelled, stepping between us. I tried to explain, my voice catching. "Mom, OptiCore is my life's work. Our competitor stole it, and I think Kyle's involved." Mom turned to Kyle, her gaze softening. "Kyle, tell me, is it true?" Kyle shook his head, his voice shaky but firm. "Mom, I didn't do anything. He's framing me." Dad grabbed my shoulder, his voice low but sharp. "Dylan, that's enough. You can't accuse your brother without proof. Kyle's trying to get his life together, and you should be supporting him." Mom wrapped her arms around Kyle, patting his back like she did when he was a kid. "Dylan, you're doing big things, but don't let the pressure make you turn on your family. Kyle's your brother." I stood there watching my parents defend Kyle, my heart shattering. Growing up, I was always the independent one, while Kyle was the one who needed protection. He stole money, dropped out of school, caused trouble, but my parents always found excuses for him. I'd gotten used to it, but now, with years of my hard work stolen, their favoritism cut deeper than ever. "If my family doesn't believe me," I said, my voice breaking, "then I have nothing left to say. But I'll find the truth, even if I have to do it alone." I turned and walked down the stairs, Mom's voice calling after me, but I didn't stop. The Tacoma rain was icy, soaking through my jacket, but the pain in my heart was colder still. I knew from now on I could only rely on myself. I drove back to Seattle through the rain, my heart heavy as lead. The sound of my parents defending Kyle, his defiant glare, all of it cut into me like a blade. My small apartment greeted me with silence, but it offered no comfort. I collapsed onto the sofa, my eyes landing on the family photo on the shelf. Mom, Dad, Kyle, and me, 15 years ago when things were still simple. Or so I'd thought. Memories flooded back, vivid and painful. I was 10, Kyle was 4, a mischievous but lovable kid. I remembered the time Kyle broke Mom's favorite vase, shards of porcelain scattered across the floor. I got scolded, punished to stand in the corner even though I'd only been watching. "Kyle's still young, you need to look after him," Dad said, his voice stern. I nodded, swallowing my tears, though I couldn't understand why I had to take the blame. Later, when I was 15, Kyle stole money from Mom's purse to buy candy. Mom knew, but just ruffled his hair, saying, "Don't be naughty next time." I stood there silent, the sense of injustice growing. By the time I was in college, working part-time to pay tuition, Kyle had dropped out, partying and getting into trouble. But my parents always made excuses. "He's still young, he'll change." I never resented them, just quietly worked harder, thinking if I was good enough, successful enough, they'd notice. But they never did. I closed my eyes, trying to push those memories away, but they clung to me like Seattle's endless rain. Then, amid the chaos of my pain, a thought sparked. OptiCore, the system tech trend stole, TrueSolve, wasn't the complete version. I remembered clearly. Before Kyle's visit, I was fixing a bug in the search algorithm. It caused OptiCore to occasionally give inaccurate results, especially for complex questions. I hadn't finished patching it, so the data Kyle took would carry that flaw. I sprang up, rushing to my computer, my heart pounding. Opening OptiCore's interface, I checked the faulty code. Just as I thought, the bug was still there, and if TrueSolve was built from my data, it would have the same flaw. I tested it with a complex question. How do I invest in international stocks with little capital? And OptiCore returned a wrong answer, suggesting a fund that had gone bankrupt. If TrueSolve did the same, it would be a fatal weakness. I immediately called Sarah, my closest colleague at Nexlify. "Sarah, listen. TrueSolve might have a flaw. I need your help to check it." Sarah hesitated. "Dylan, you're suspended. If the boss finds out..." I cut her off. "Sarah, this is my only shot to save OptiCore. Do you trust me?" She sighed, then agreed. "Fine. Send me the details, but you owe me coffee." All night, Sarah and I worked remotely, analyzing TrueSolve's public test runs. As I'd predicted, it gave incorrect answers to several complex questions, mirroring OptiCore's bug. I clenched my fist, a glimmer of hope flickering inside. If I exposed this flaw, TechTrend would pay. This was the lifeline I had to grab tightly if I didn't want to drown. The next morning, I stood in front of Nexlify's building in the light drizzle, my heart a mix of determination and anxiety. I was suspended, but I couldn't just sit idly by while OptiCore, my life's work, was being exploited by TechTrend. Taking a deep breath, I walked in, ignoring the curious glances from a few colleagues. I needed to see Mike, my boss, and convince him we could turn the tables. Mike was in his office, papers scattered across his desk. When he saw me, he frowned. "Dylan, what are you doing here? I told you to stay home." I didn't beat around the bush. "Mike, TrueSolve has a flaw. It was built from OptiCore, and I know the flaw because I hadn't fixed it yet. If we expose it, TechTrend will crumble." Mike looked at me, half skeptical, half intrigued. "Are you sure? If you're wrong, the whole company's reputation is at stake." I nodded, my voice firm. I'm sure. Give me and my team a chance. We can do this. After a long pause, Mike nodded. All right, call your team in. But Dylan, if you're wrong, it's not just you. My job's on the line too. I smiled for the first time in days. Thanks, Mike. I won't let you down. I called Sarah and the tech team, 4 comrades who'd been with Opticore from the start. In the meeting room, I explained the flaw in detail. TrueSolve's search algorithm gave incorrect answers to complex questions, especially in finance and healthcare, due to a data processing error I hadn't yet fixed. We'll dig deeper, gather evidence, and go public, I said. Sarah nodded, her eyes lighting up. Tech Trend's been hyping TrueSolve like it's divine. If we drop this bombshell, they won't know what hit them. All day we worked relentlessly. Sarah ran hundreds of complex questions through TrueSolve, documenting the inaccurate responses. I and 2 other engineers analyzed the stolen codebase, confirming it matched Opticore down to the smallest details, including the flaw. By evening, we had a detailed report. TrueSolve not only gave wrong answers, but also made dangerous recommendations, like suggesting investment in bankrupt companies or incorrect medication dosages for hypothetical patients. I pitched a PR plan to Mike. Tech Trends spent millions marketing TrueSolve. If we expose the flaw now, the press will pounce. They'll lose all credibility. Mike agreed and contacted Nexlify's media team. Just 2 days later, we held a press conference. I stood before the crowd, my voice trembling but steady. Tech Trends' TrueSolve is unsafe. It gives wrong answers, putting users at risk. Here's the proof. Sarah presented the examples and the press erupted with questions like a storm. After the press conference, the news spread like wildfire and Tech Trend collapsed like a sandcastle before the waves. Their stock plummeted, customers turned away, and the media dug in relentlessly. Nexlify seized the opportunity, announcing that Opticore would soon launch with a perfected, error-free version. I was called back, not just to resume the project, but to take on the role of development team lead. Mike clapped me on the shoulder in the meeting room, a rare smile on his face. Dylan, you saved the company, now finish it. A major contract with the Silicon Valley tech conglomerate came through the following week, and my name was hailed as Nexlify's hero. But the joy was bittersweet. One evening, as I was reviewing code in my apartment, my phone buzzed. It was Mom, her voice trembling on the verge of tears. Dylan, Kyle's gone missing. Some men in black suits came to the house asking about Tech Trend. They threatened us, said Kyle owes them a huge debt. I sat frozen, my grip tightening on the phone. Mom, who are they? What's going on? Mom choked back sobs. They said Kyle sold some information but messed up their plans. Now they're after him. Dylan, why did you drag your brother into this? My heart felt like it was being crushed. I knew Kyle had sold Opticore to Tech Trend, but I hadn't realized he was entangled with something deeper, possibly with dangerous people. Mom, I didn't drag Kyle into anything, I said, my voice firm but pained. If Kyle chose that path, that's on him. Dad cut in, his voice angry through the speakerphone. Dylan, you've ruined this family. You went public with this, and now Kyle's on the run while we live in fear. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Dad, Mom, I was protecting my work. Kyle betrayed me, not the other way around. If you want to blame someone, blame the one who did wrong. I hung up, my heart heavy. The image of Kyle, the little kid who used to follow me around the yard crying when bullies picked on him, flashed in my mind, but I no longer saw that brother. Kyle had chosen his path, and now he had to face the consequences. I heard from Sarah that Tech Trend was conducting an internal investigation, hunting for the source of the leak. Kyle most likely was hiding somewhere, living in fear. Part of me felt a pang of pity, but a larger part was resolute. I couldn't keep carrying the weight of someone else's mistakes. My parents didn't call again, but I knew they were still being threatened. Once Mom texted a brief message. Dylan, help Kyle, he's your brother. I read it, then deleted it. For the first time, I felt no guilt. Growing up, I was always the forgotten child, the one who had to stand on his own. Now, I chose myself. In the weeks that followed, my life slowly found its rhythm, but it wasn't the same. Nexlify became the center of attention thanks to TechTrend's scandal. Opticore was completed swiftly, and when it launched, it exceeded all expectations. Companies from Seattle to New York lined up to partner with us, calling Opticore the Google of accurate answers. I was promoted, leading a new team, and for the first time, I felt my efforts were truly recognized. At the company's celebratory party, Mike raised a glass with me, laughing heartily. "Dylan, you're a star. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I smiled back, but there was still an emptiness in my heart that couldn't be filled. My small apartment was tidier now, but the family photo had been tucked away in a drawer. I no longer wanted to look at it. News of Kyle came in short, sporadic messages from Mom. He was still on the run, possibly in a distant city, living in the shadows of those hunting him. Mom said Kyle called once, his voice panicked, but he wouldn't say where he was. My parents lived in constant anxiety, their doors always locked, their phones buzzing with anonymous calls. They stopped reaching out to me, but I knew they still blamed me, as if I were the one who pushed Kyle down that path. I didn't explain further. Words couldn't mend what was already broken. Sitting alone in my apartment, watching the Seattle rain fall outside the window, I reflected on everything. I used to believe family was a refuge, that no matter what, blood would always bind us. But Kyle taught me that blind trust, even in family, can lead to pain. He betrayed me, not just for money, but out of selfishness and a jealousy I'd never noticed. My parents, with their biased love, had unwittingly enabled Kyle's mistakes and the rift between us. But I also learned something greater. Sometimes protecting yourself is necessary. I stood up, not just for Opticore, but for my self-respect. I was no longer the quiet boy who endured injustice, no longer the older brother who always gave in. I chose my own path, even if it was lonely, even if it meant cutting ties that once held me close. Now every time I open Opticore and see it helping millions find answers, I feel a sense of relief. Not because of the success, but because I know I did the right thing. The rain still falls, but I no longer feel cold. I found my own answer, to live true to myself no matter the cost.